project that are created, we can go in and actually start doing our project planning. And I can come into the project management overview and see all of my active projects, and that's now appeared. So my Williams & Sons project 3298 is here. And we'll go in and take a quick peek at all the different areas that we can start planning from the project itself. So let's just call this demo, since we want to make sure that we know what it is. All right. Oops, did that wrong. All right, much better. All right, and now I can start building out my project plan. From the project itself, we do have templates. So if you do have a standard template that you're always doing for every single one of your projects, you can copy a project from that template, and then the way that projects and sales works, they can be interchangeable. So you don't necessarily need the sales order to create the project, and vice versa. If, for example, you start doing a lot of work on that project, maybe it's a scoping or pre-sales work, or if you're out in the field doing some analysis or things like that, and you want to accumulate those costs, but you don't necessarily have an order in hand, we can create the project in advance of that, just so you can always keep track of that and then relate it back to the sales order once that PO from the customer does come in. So we can add in, again, tasks, phases, any sorts of milestones. I'm just gonna, again, for quick simplicity's purpose, we're gonna add a couple tasks onto here. You'll notice it's a lot like Microsoft Project. I actually think it's a lot easier than, Microsoft Project, because there's a lot of drag and drop type, real nice capabilities around linking things together. So let's say we're working on reports and KPIs, and then we'll add a milestone at the end of this. Everything up here is going to be listed, so I can assign different days to it. The first 15 days of our 30-day engagement is going to be reports in the next days, because based on those reports, we're going to create some KPIs in here. And I've got my different hours. So what I can now start to do, I can even set up, let's say, different, make sure that, that we've got on the overall what our calendar is, so I can set up my scheduling. If I want to make sure either I've got people that are working 24/7 or that you actually give them a weekend off, we can set that up to be exclusive of your weekends from a planning side, and you'll see that changes a little bit and moves everything out when I start to put it out to a longer time frame. As things turn red, you'll notice that. All right, if I start to hover over here, I'm looking at my 10:19 to 11:08. They're here, and if I want to start putting my dependencies within my project plan, rather than having to go into a tool or a drop down, I can just hover over these, grab that guy, and then just move it to where I need it to. Okay, and I can push this out. If I move that out, this is also telling me that my Gantt chart will change colors depending on if I'm coming up on critical timing. So we were kind of ending our tasks exactly at the same time, or maybe a little bit over where we anticipated our overall project plan to end. And we'll see that reflected in real time as I'm moving my days and things around. So if I extend this guy out, it'll make the project red. All right, we'll say end there. So once our project is planned, I can now start to assign different resources to that project, and I can hop into my team and staffing. Now, I don't want to be the one that's working on it, and I want maybe my team member, I want a team member, Tanya, to start working on this project. So I can assign her to the project, and then we know it's a 50-hour engagement, so I'll assign my 50 hours of committed work to her, and what her default, what the type of work, what her job type is for that. So it's a consultancy job. And I can start to keep track now of my committed variance versus my plan and all the remaining work that I have. So this is just my quick snapshot of what's happening. If before I commit her to this job, or I want to see where I can slot her in for work from an availability standpoint, I can look and see the available resources and where she's overcommitted or undercommitted. So I can now see that she can't really start working on projects until November 1st, and these are the amounts of times that she had. So maybe she's not the right person to be looking at this project, but we'll give it a whirl anyway. You'll also notice that we can keep track of the skills details. If you have certain resources that can only do particular things within the organization, we can keep track of that, and you can view those, and then we can also do searches for resources based on those skills. All right, so now we want to staff her into this project. And it's as simple, I can either staff by a team member, I can say Tanya's going to go into a particular, I've got the different options again, staff by team member, so what's she going to do for that project, or I can staff by the structure of the project. So I'll move Tanya into here, and this just allows us at those particular times to start entering time for that project. And I'm actually going to move this project back slightly. So now we've got her time associated. Let's move this guy back so we can start to enter time for this week for her. And as we go back into staffing, now we can see again how much time we're going to have her spend on this project. So let's say we've got 50 hours total. We're going to put 25 and 25 for each of those different units, and then remove this. Okay. So now we've got our exact person that's responsible for each of those different topics. Again, depending on how granular you need within your organization, you can assign people at any level of the structure. For me, a lot of times I just say, I just want an overall cost, so I'm going to assign all of my resources at that top level and put them in for the different times. It just makes time entry and expense entry a lot easier when they're looking at just the overall project as opposed to a specific task. So, or you might just assign your different resources to phases. So you have all of that flexibility to be able to do what you need from a reporting perspective, whether it's super deep level or more high level. So we go back up to the top too. Not only can we plan our resources, but let's look at, now I can start to evaluate that project plan. So if I look, then once I have that, I can now see the cost associated with that project. This is great when I'm starting to do planning prior to an order coming in and I'm trying to estimate out what my revenues are going to be with a particular project. I can create that plan, assign the different resources that I need or the services that I'm performing, do my cost workup, and then do my quote after I've accumulated all that cost. And so you'll notice that not only do I have my work cost, but I've also got material and expense cost as well. And so if I wanted to look at something like expenses, I can take my expense groups in here and put in, maybe they're going to do some travel, that's included. And we're going to say it's going to be like $500 during the course of that plan. What I also have the capability in ByDesign to do is really spread out that anticipated. So this is all of our budget. This is everything that's happening within, or what I anticipate to happen within my plan. I don't necessarily want to see $500 in my plan for the first day of the project or the last day of the project, or at least in one day. Maybe I want to see that spread over periods. So what I can do is generate a period plan that'll split up over the course of that project from the start date and every month and successive in between, and then really just start assigning where I'm going to see those costs incurred. Again, like an implementation, you might see something come up a lot in the front when you're doing scoping, and then the go live might have a lot, but in the middle there's not a lot of travel that goes along. So I can now start to really see those on my plan to actuals when I'm realizing a lot of that those costs. Okay. I can do that also with my revenues as well. And then any sorts of attachments that I need to add on. Maybe it's the project, their project plan, their resource plan, something like that. We can add any of those attachments directly into the project itself. All right, so that's just a quick bit on creating our project. So now we have our two we've got the 2 tasks that we can now have Tanya assigned to, and let's go ahead and release that project. We can create baselines, so when we have change projects, different snapshots for when I'm doing changes within the project plan, so I can actually monitor those changes over time to my project through the use of snapshots. If I want to make sure if I'm tracking if I'm tracking in a downward fashion. All right.